December 1889. Clara Whitmore stepped off the stagecoach into a wall of falling snow and hostile stares. Her dress was patched in 4 places. Her shoes had holes. She owned nothing but a carpetbag and her dignity. The man waiting for her, Caleb Morrison, took one look, and his jaw went tight with regret. But his 7-year-old son Sam broke free from his father's grip, ran straight to her, and grabbed her frozen hand. "You're her," the boy whispered. "You're finally here." And in that moment, everything changed. If you want to see what happens next, subscribe to our channel and follow Clara's journey to the very end. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories travel. The stagecoach lurched to a stop, and Clara Whitmore's heart lurched with it. She pressed her palm against the frost-covered window, peering out at the small Montana town that would decide her fate. Sage Creek, population maybe 200 souls. Her entire future reduced to a single street lined with wooden buildings and suspicious faces. "End of the line, miss." The driver's voice held no warmth. He'd barely spoken to her the entire 3-day journey from Helena, not after he'd seen her threadbare coat and worn-through shoes. She'd grown used to that look, the quick assessment, the dismissal that followed. Clara gathered her carpetbag. Inside it, one change of clothes, her mother's book of poetry, her father's lucky coin, and the letter. That letter she'd read so many times the paper had gone soft at the creases. Seeking practical woman for frontier life. Widower with young son. Must be willing to work hard. Character matters more than circumstance. Character matters more than circumstance. She'd clung to those words like a drowning woman clings to driftwood. The door swung open. Cold air hit her face like a slap. She climbed down her thin shoes, immediately soaking through in the snow. And there he was. Caleb Morrison. He stood apart from the small crowd that had gathered. Because of course a crowd had gathered, mail-order brides being the closest thing to theater in a town like this. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a face that might have been handsome if it hadn't been carved from stone. Dark hair touched with gray at the temples. Eyes the color of winter sky and just as cold. Beside him, gripping his hand, stood a boy. 7 years old, the letter had said. Brown curls escaping from beneath a wool cap. Eyes that held none of his father's hardness, only desperate, aching hope. Clara's chest tightened. Caleb Morrison looked at her patched dress, her soaked shoes, the carpetbag that held everything she owned in this world. His expression didn't change, but something shifted behind those gray eyes. Regret. She recognized it immediately. "Mr. Morrison." She kept her voice steady. "I'm Clara Whitmore." He didn't move, didn't tip his hat, didn't offer his hand. "You're not what I expected." The words fell between them like stones. Clara lifted her chin. She'd heard worse. She'd survived worse. "And what did you expect, Mr. Morrison?" "Someone more." He stopped searching for a word that wouldn't be cruel. "Prosperous," she supplied. "Well-fed. Better dressed." His jaw tightened. "Practical," he finished. Before Clara could respond, the boy broke free from his father's grip. He ran straight to her boots, splashing through the slush, and grabbed her hand with both of his. "You're her." His voice trembled. "You're finally here. I've been waiting and waiting. Pa said you might not come, but I knew you would. I knew it." Clara's throat closed. She knelt down, heedless of the wet snow soaking through her dress, and looked into the boy's face. "You must be Samuel." "Sam." He squeezed her fingers. "Everyone calls me Sam. Are you going to be my new ma?" "Sam." Caleb's voice cut sharp. "That's enough." But Sam didn't let go. His grip tightened his small body, leaning toward her like a flower toward sun. "You're cold," he said. "You're shivering. Pa, she's shivering. We gotta take her home." From the boardwalk came a woman's voice, sugar-coated poison. "Well, well. So this is the mail-order bride." Clara looked up. A woman in an expensive wool coat stood watching two others flanking her like lieutenants. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Harriet Pruitt," Caleb said flatly. "This isn't your concern." "Oh, but the welfare of this community is always my concern, Mr. Morrison." Mrs. Pruitt descended the steps, her boots barely touching the snow, before she stopped at a safe distance, as if poverty might be contagious. "We'd heard you'd sent away for a bride. We simply didn't expect this." Her gaze traveled over Clara's patches, her worn shoes, her wind-chapped face. "Goodness, did you come from a poorhouse, dear?" Clara straightened Sam's hand still clutched in hers. "I came from Boston, Mrs. Pruitt, where I spent 10 years as a governess to the children of Senator Whitfield's family." A flicker of surprise crossed the woman's face. "A governess? Then how did I end up here with nothing?" Clara met her stare without flinching. "The same way many women end up with nothing, ma'am. Through circumstances beyond my control and the cruelty of those I trusted." Mrs. Pruitt's companions exchanged glances. "Surely you had family." "I had my father until I was 20. After that I had only myself." Clara's voice didn't waver. "I don't require pity, Mrs. Pruitt. Only opportunity, which Mr. Morrison's advertisement offered." "An opportunity?" Mrs. Pruitt laughed, a delicate cutting sound. "Is that what we're calling it now? Dorothy, dear, didn't you have something to say?" A younger woman stepped forward, Mrs. Pruitt's daughter, clearly with the same calculated smile. 28 perhaps, with carefully arranged curls and a dress that cost more than Clara would earn in a year. "I simply wanted to welcome our new neighbor." Dorothy's voice dripped false sweetness. "Though I do wonder, Miss Whitmore, was it? I wonder how a Boston governess plans to survive a Montana winter. Have you ever split wood, hauled water from a frozen pump, tended livestock in a blizzard?" "No," Clara admitted. Dorothy's smile widened. "Then I'm afraid," Clara continued, "I'll simply have to learn, as I've learned everything else in my life, by doing." Caleb made a sound, not quite a laugh, not quite a grunt. Clara couldn't tell if it was approval or derision. "Pa." Sam tugged his father's coat. "Pa, she's still shivering. Can we go home now, please?" For a long moment, Caleb Morrison stood motionless. Clara saw the war behind his eyes, duty against doubt, decency against embarrassment. The whole town was watching, waiting to see what he would do. Then he stepped forward, took the carpet bag from Clara's hand, and nodded toward the wagon. "Get in, both of you." Mrs. Pruitt's smile froze. "Mr. Morrison, surely you don't intend to—" "What I intend, Mrs. Pruitt, is to get this woman out of the cold." He met her gaze without warmth. "Unless you'd like to stand here discussing it until we all freeze." He helped Sam up first, then offered Clara his hand. His grip was rough, calloused, impersonal, but he didn't let go until she was steady on the wagon seat. As he climbed up and took the reins, Clara heard Mrs. Pruitt's voice pitched just loud enough to carry. "Poor Caleb. Martha must be turning in her grave." Caleb's shoulders went rigid. But he didn't respond. He flicked the reins and the horses lurched forward. They rode in silence. Sam sat between them, pressed against Clara's side for warmth. She could feel him trembling, not from cold, she realized, but from excitement. Or fear. Perhaps both. The town fell away behind them. Open land stretched ahead, white and vast and terrifying in its emptiness. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks lost in clouds. 3 miles, Caleb said finally. "Ranch is 3 miles out." Clara nodded. More silence. Then, "That woman, Mrs. Pruitt. She won't leave you alone." "I gathered that." "Her daughter Dorothy." Caleb's jaw worked. "She's been after me to marry her since Martha died." "I see." "I'm not going to. Marry her, I mean." He said it flat factual. "She doesn't want a husband. She wants the ranch. 3,000 acres and 600 head of cattle. Clara processed this. That's a significant ranch. Martha's father helped build it. He died 2 years after we married, left everything to her. A pause. When she passed, it became mine, and Sam's. Mrs. Pruitt must have been disappointed. Mrs. Pruitt thinks her daughter deserves what Martha had. The house, the land, the life. His hands tightened on the reins. She's wrong. They crested a small rise, and Clara saw at the ranch. A large cabin, solidly built, smoke rising from the chimney. A barn, several outbuildings, fenced pastures spreading toward the mountains. Even covered in snow, even gray under winter sky, it was beautiful. Pa built the cabin himself, Sam said suddenly. Him and Mr. Jacob. It took 2 whole summers. Mama said it was the finest house in the territory. Caleb's face did something complicated at the mention of his wife. Sam. I know. The boy's voice dropped. Don't talk about Mama. That's not... Caleb stopped, let out a breath. You can talk about her. Not right now. Clara watched this exchange heart-aching. There was a language here she didn't yet speak, a grief she was only beginning to glimpse. The wagon pulled up to the cabin. A man emerged from the barn, tall, dark-skinned, wearing a heavy coat and an expression of frank curiosity. That's Mr. Jacob, Sam explained, climbing down. He's Pa's foreman. He knows everything about horses. Jacob Reeves approached, tipping his hat to Clara. Ma'am? Mr. Reeves. His eyes took her in. The poor clothes, the dignified bearing, and something that might have been approval flickered across his face. Long journey. 3 days from Helena, longer than that from Boston. Boston. He nodded slowly. Long way from home. I don't have a home, Mr. Reeves. That's rather the point. Jacob glanced at Caleb, then back at Clara. Reckon you do now, ma'am, whether it feels like it yet or not. He reached for the horse's reins. I'll settle these 2. You folks get inside before this storm worsens. Storm. Clara looked up and realized the snowfall had thickened, the wind picking up. The temperature was dropping fast. Caleb opened the cabin door and gestured her inside. Warmth hit her first. Then the smell, wood smoke, coffee, something savory cooking. Then the sight of the room itself, rough-hewn but well-made, with a large fireplace, a scrubbed wooden table, hooks by the door for coats and hats. A woman's touch lingered in small details. Gingham curtains, a crocheted blanket over the rocking chair, dried flowers in a jar on the mantel. Martha's touches. Martha's home. Clara stood frozen in the doorway, suddenly aware of the magnitude of what she'd agreed to. She wasn't just entering a house. She was entering a life, a history, a grief she had no part in creating and no right to heal. Miss Clara. Sam tugged her hand. Are you okay? She forced herself to breathe, forced a smile. I'm fine, Sam. Just taking it in. This is the main room. He pulled her forward, eager tour guide. That's where Pa sits. That's where Mama used to sit, but you can sit there now if you want. The kitchen's through there. Mrs. Clayton from town comes sometimes to help cook, but Pa says we don't need charity. Sam. Caleb's voice was tired. Let her catch her breath. But Pa, go feed Biscuit. He's been in the barn all morning. Sam's face fell. But I want to show Miss Clara. Later. The boy looked between his father and Clara, hope warring with obedience. Finally, he released Clara's hand and trudged toward the door. Biscuit's my dog, he said over his shoulder. You'll like him. He's real friendly. Then he was gone, and Clara was alone with Caleb Morrison. The silence stretched. Caleb moved to the fireplace, added a log, stirred the embers. When he spoke, he didn't turn around. Your room's down the hall, second door. Sam's is across from you. Mine's at the end. Thank you. There's hot water on the stove, coffee in the pot. Help yourself. That's very kind. He did turn then, and his expression stopped her. I need to be clear about something, Miss Whitmore. Clara waited. I placed that advertisement because Sam needs a woman's influence. The ranch needs a woman's hand. I can't raise a boy and run 600 head of cattle without help. He met her eyes, unflinching. I don't need a wife, not the way most men mean it. You understand? Clara understood perfectly. The arrangement would be practical, businesslike. He was offering her a roof, food security, but not himself, not his heart. Fair enough. She hadn't come here expecting love. She'd come expecting survival. I understand, Mr. Morrison. Good. He turned back to the fire. Supper's at 6. Breakfast at 5. We work hard here. Everyone works. I'm not afraid of work. We'll see. She should have been insulted. Would have been perhaps if she hadn't heard the exhaustion beneath his gruffness. This man was drowning in grief, in responsibility, in loneliness he refused to acknowledge. And his son was drowning too in a different way, starving for something Caleb couldn't give him. Clara picked up her carpet bag. Mr. Morrison, he grunted, your son is remarkable. Something shifted in his shoulders. For a moment she thought he might respond. Then, second door down the hall. Clara went. The room was small, simple, clean. A narrow bed with a patchwork quilt. A washstand with a chipped basin. A window looking out on the snow-covered yard. On the wall hung a small sampler cross-stitched in childish letters for Mama's guest. Clara's vision blurred. She sat on the bed, carpet bag in her lap, and finally allowed herself to tremble. The journey had been long. The reception had been harsh. The future was utterly uncertain. But she was here. She had a room. She had a chance. That was more than she'd had 2 months ago when Senator Whitfield's wife had thrown her out with nothing but lies and accusations. When every door in Boston had closed against her. When she'd stood at the harbor watching ships depart and wondering if the water might be kinder than the world. She thought of Sam's small hand gripping hers. You're finally here. She thought of Caleb's rigid shoulders, his careful distance, the wound he wore like armor. She thought of Mrs. Pruitt's poisoned smile, the battle lines already drawn. Clara opened her carpet bag and withdrew her mother's book, a slim volume of poetry, spine-cracked pages soft from use. She held it against her chest. I'm here, Mama, she whispered. I made it. Outside, the snow kept falling. An hour later, Clara emerged from her room to find Sam sitting at the kitchen table, a large orange dog sprawled at his feet. Miss Clara. He scrambled up. This is Biscuit. He's 4 years old. Pa found him as a puppy out by the creek. The dog's tail thumped against the floor. Clara knelt and offered her hand. Biscuit sniffed it thoroughly, then licked her fingers. He likes you, Sam breathed. He doesn't like everyone. He didn't like Mrs. Clayton at all, bit her apron right off her. Sam. Caleb's voice came from the doorway. He'd removed his coat, rolled up his sleeves. What did I tell you about that story? Not to tell it. Sam grinned. But it's true, Pa. True doesn't always mean needs telling. Clara rose, hiding her smile. It seems Biscuit has good judgment. Caleb's eyebrow lifted. You never met Mrs. Clayton. I met Mrs. Pruitt. I imagine they're similar. For half a heartbeat, something flickered across his face. Surprise maybe, or reluctant amusement. They're sisters, actually. That explains a great deal. Sam laughed, a bright sound that filled the kitchen like sunlight. Even Caleb's mouth twitched. Then he seemed to catch himself, shuddering his expression. Supper's in 2 hours. Sam, show Miss Whitmore where things are, then homework. But Pa, homework, Sam. The boy sighed the sigh of 7-year-olds everywhere when faced with injustice. But he took Clara's hand again, warm and trusting. Come on, Miss Clara, I'll show you everything. He showed her the pantry, well stocked with preserved vegetables and smoked meat. The root cellar accessible through a trapdoor in the kitchen. The wood box by the back door, the water pump that had to be primed carefully, the trick to lighting the temperamental stove. Mama knew how to make it work right away, Sam said, watching Clara struggle with the flu. She grew up on a ranch in Wyoming. She knew everything about frontier living. Clara finally got the stove drawing properly. Your mother sounds remarkable. She was. Sam's voice went soft. She smelled like lavender. She used to sing me songs at bedtime. She told the best stories better than anyone. What happened to her? She shouldn't have asked, but the boy needed to talk, that much was clear. Sam's eyes went distant. She had a baby. Inside her, I mean. A brother for me. His fingers twisted together. But the baby came too early, and there was blood. So much blood. Doc Chen came as fast as he could, but he trailed off. They're both in heaven now, Mama and the baby. Pa built them a marker out by the big oak tree. Clara's heart clenched. I'm so sorry, Sam. Pa says sorry doesn't change anything. The boy looked up at her, eyes too old for his face. But I think it helps. Sometimes, just to hear someone say it. She knelt again, taking his small hands in hers. Then I'm sorry, Samuel Morrison. I'm sorry you lost your mother. I'm sorry you lost your brother. I'm sorry the world is sometimes terribly unfair. She squeezed his fingers. And I'm grateful, very grateful that you ran to me today, when everyone else was watching and waiting to judge. Sam's lower lip trembled. I saw you from the wagon, before we stopped. You looked scared but brave at the same time, like how I feel when Pa takes me to check the cattle in the far pasture where the wolves sometimes come. I was scared, Clara admitted. I still am. You don't look it. I've had a lot of practice hiding it. Sam considered this, then solemnly. I won't tell anyone. That you're scared, I mean. It'll be our secret. Thank you, Sam. He threw his arms around her neck, a sudden fierce hug that stole her breath. I'm glad you came, he whispered. Even if Pa isn't. Even if those mean ladies aren't. I'm glad. Clara hugged him back, this motherless boy who had claimed her heart in the space of an afternoon. I'm glad too. From the doorway came the sound of a throat clearing. They broke apart. Caleb stood there, expression unreadable, a bucket of water in each hand. Pump's freezing up, he said flatly. Brought this from the well. Should last the night. Thank you, Mr. Morrison. He set the buckets down. His gaze moved from Clara to Sam and back, lingering on the tear tracks on his son's face. Sam, homework, now. Yes, Pa. The boy gathered his slate and primer from the shelf and settled at the table. Clara moved toward the stove, giving them space. I can start supper, she offered, if you tell me what needs doing. Stew's already on. Caleb nodded toward the pot she'd noticed earlier. Just needs stirring now and then. I can do that. He nodded, turned to go. Mr. Morrison. He paused. Sam told me about his mother. About how she died. Clara kept her voice low. I wanted you to know. In case it matters for how we move forward. Caleb's back was rigid. It was 3 years ago. Grief doesn't follow a calendar. He turned then, and his eyes held something raw, something dangerous. What would you know about it? I know I lost my father when I was 20. I know I lost my position, my reputation, my entire life 2 months ago. I know grief comes in waves, and some days you think you've made it to shore only to be pulled under again. She held his gaze. I know you're angry, Mr. Morrison, and I know some of that anger isn't really about me. For a long moment, he didn't speak. The fire crackled. Sam's slate pencil scratched softly at the table. Then, supper's at 6. He walked out. Supper was quiet. Sam chattered when he could, filling silences with stories about Biscuit, about the new calf born last spring, about how his friend Henry at school had lost his front teeth and now whistled when he talked. Clara responded warmly. Caleb ate in silence. The stew was good, hearty, well-seasoned. clearly the work of someone who knew their way around a kitchen. Not Caleb, she suspected. Probably Jacob, or the much-maligned Mrs. Clayton. "Pa made it," Sam said, reading her expression. "He's a real good cook when he wants to be." Clara glanced at Caleb, surprised. "My mother," he said shortly. "She believed every person should know how to feed themselves." "She sounds wise." "She was practical." He pushed back from the table. "Sam, clear the dishes. Miss Whitmore, I'll show you the morning routine." He walked her through it, the early wake-up, the fire that needed banking, the animals that needed tending, the water that needed hauling. It was exhausting even to hear. "I can take on some of the indoor work," Clara offered. "Cooking, cleaning, mending, lessons for Sam if you'd like. I was a governess for 10 years. "I know, you mentioned it." "I'm good at what I do, Mr. Morrison. I can teach him reading, writing, arithmetic, history, geography." "He's got a school in town." "Yes, but winters here are long, I imagine, and the ride is far." She met his eyes. "Let me be useful. That's all I'm asking." He studied her. She couldn't tell what he was thinking. "Trial basis," he said finally. "1 month. We'll see how you manage." "Fair enough." "And Miss Whitmore?" "Yes. Stop calling me Mr. Morrison. Makes me feel like my father." A beat. "Caleb will do." "Then you should call me Clara." He nodded once shortly. Then he was gone, disappeared down the hall to his room. Clara stood alone in the kitchen, the fire dying to embers, and allowed herself a small breath of hope. She had a month. 1 month to prove her worth, to make herself indispensable, to show this wounded man and his lonely boy that character really did matter more than circumstance. In the distance, a wolf howled. The wind rattled the windows. Winter had barely begun. That night, Clara dreamed of Boston. She dreamed of Senator Whitfield's hand on her arm, his breath hot against her cheek, his voice slick with false charm. She dreamed of Mrs. Whitfield's face twisted with fury, hurling accusations that weren't true, would never be true. She dreamed of packing her single bag, while the other servants watched, none willing to speak in her defense. She woke gasping, heart-pounding, the quilt tangled around her legs. Darkness. Cold. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then memory returned. Montana. The ranch. Caleb's guarded eyes and Sam's eager ones. She lay still, breathing slowly, letting her heart settle. A sound from the hall. Footsteps small and hesitant. Then a soft knock at her door. "Miss Clara." She was up immediately, crossing to open it. Sam stood in the hallway, barefoot, clutching a ragged stuffed horse. "Sam, what's wrong?" "I had a bad dream." His voice wavered. "About Mama. She was calling for me, but I couldn't find her." Clara's heart broke. "Come here, sweetheart." She led him to her bed, wrapped the quilt around his shoulders, sat beside him. "When I was young," she said softly, "I used to have terrible dreams. My mother would hold me and tell me that dreams are just our minds trying to sort through all the feelings we have. Even the scary ones. They're not real, Sam. They're just echoes." "Echoes." Sam turned the word over. "Like when you shout in the canyon and it comes back." "Exactly like that. Pa says I'm too old for bad dreams." "Your father is wrong." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Sam's eyes went wide. "Don't tell him I said that," Clara added quickly. "But Sam, there's no age limit on grief, or fear, or needing comfort." The boy was quiet for a moment. Then, "Will you tell me a story? Mama used to tell me stories when I couldn't sleep." Clara thought of her mother's book of poetry, of the fairy tales her father had invented, of all the stories she'd told the Whitfield children over the years. "Once upon a time," she began, "there was a boy who lived in a kingdom of snow." She wove a tale of brave princes and loyal horses of winter forests, and warm hearths of a mother watching from the stars. Sam's eyes grew heavy. His head drooped against her shoulder. By the time she finished, he was asleep. Clara eased him down onto the pillow, tucked the quilt around him. She should wake him, send him back to his own room. But he looked so peaceful, so young. She curled up in the chair instead, her mother's book in her lap. That was how Caleb found them at dawn. He stopped in the doorway, coffee cup in hand, and stared. His son asleep in the mail-order bride's bed. The bride herself upright in a chair, dark circles under her eyes. "He had a nightmare," Clara said quietly. "I hope you don't. It's fine." His voice was rough. He stared at Sam for a long moment, something working behind his eyes. Then he set down the coffee cup and crossed to the bed, lifted his son gently, carried him out. When he returned, Clara was standing smoothing her rumpled dress. "Coffee's hot," Caleb said. "Breakfast in 20 minutes. There's work to do." He left without another word. But there was something different in his gaze this time, something that hadn't been there before. Clara allowed herself to hope it might be the beginning of respect. The first week tested Clara in ways she hadn't anticipated. She rose before dawn each morning, fumbling with the temperamental stove, burning her fingers on hot iron, learning through failure after failure how to coax flame from reluctant wood. Her hands soft from years of holding nothing heavier than books, and embroidery needles cracked and bled from the cold and the work. But she didn't complain. Not once. "You're doing it wrong." Caleb's voice came from behind her on the third morning. Clara was struggling with the water pump, her arms aching from the effort of priming it in the freezing cold. "I'm aware," she said through gritted teeth. "I'm also doing it anyway." He watched her for a moment. Then he stepped forward, placed his hands over hers on the pump handle. "Rhythm matters more than strength, like this." He guided her through the motion, down, up, steady and even. Water sputtered, then flowed. "Oh." Clara stared at the stream filling her bucket. "That's considerably easier. Most things are once you know the trick." He released her hands and stepped back. "Sam's waiting for breakfast." He was gone before she could thank him. But that night, she found a pair of worn leather gloves on the kitchen table. They were too big for her, clearly his, but they would protect her hands. She didn't mention them. Neither did he. The days fell into rhythm. Clara learned to bank the fire so it would last through the night. She learned which floorboards creaked and which stayed silent. She learned that Caleb took his coffee black and bitter, that Sam hated porridge, but would eat it without complaint if she added honey, that Jacob Reeves had a sweet tooth he tried to hide, and a wisdom he didn't. "You're doing well," Jacob told her one afternoon. She'd brought him coffee in the barn where he was mending tack. "Better than most would." "I'm barely keeping up." "That's more than keeping up, ma'am. That's surviving." He looked at her over his coffee cup. "This land breaks people. Breaks them hard and fast. You're still standing." "I don't have a choice." "Everyone's got a choice. You could have given up day one. Could have asked to be sent back." He set down his cup. "But you didn't." Clara thought about this. "Where would I go back to? That's what I mean." Jacob's eyes were kind. "Some people got nothing behind them and still can't move forward. You got nothing behind you and you're running towards something. That takes grit. Or desperation. Sometimes they're the same thing." Sam burst through the barn door, biscuit at his heels. "Miss Clara Pa says supper's ready. He made biscuits and everything." Clara smiled. "Then we'd better not keep him waiting." She'd been at the ranch for 10 days when the first real trouble came. It arrived in the form of Mrs. Pruitt's carriage rattling up the frozen road just past noon. Clara was hanging laundry, a battle against the cold that left her fingers numb when she heard the horses. Caleb emerged from the barn, his expression darkening. "Get inside," he said to Clara. "I can handle." "Inside, please." The please stopped her. He'd never said please to her before. She went. But she didn't go far. Just inside the door, where she could hear without being seen. "Mrs. Pruitt." Caleb's voice was flat. "What brings you out?" "Concern, Mr. Morrison. Pure Christian concern." The carriage door opened. "Dorothy dear, come say hello." "Hello, Caleb." Dorothy's voice was honey and thorns. "You're looking tired. Working too hard as always." "Ranch doesn't run itself." "It might with the right help." A pause. "Speaking of which, I don't see your guest." "Miss Whitmore is inside. Working." "Working." Mrs. Pruitt's laugh was a small, sharp thing. "How domestic. Tell me, has she managed to learn the difference between a cow and a horse yet?" "She's learning fast." "Is she?" "Because I've heard differently." The older woman's voice dropped to false sympathy. "The Miller boy saw her struggling with your pump yesterday. Nearly in tears, he said. And Mrs. Clayton mentioned the smoke pouring from your chimney last week, clearly someone who doesn't know how to manage a flue." Caleb said nothing. "Caleb." Dorothy's voice softened, intimate. "We're only thinking of you. And poor little Sam. He deserves better than some desperate woman from back east who can't even—" "Sam likes her." Silence. "He what?" "Sam. Likes. Her." Caleb's voice hardened. First time he's smiled in months. First time he's slept through the night without screaming for his mother. Children don't know what's good for them. Maybe not, but they know what feels safe. A pause. "Is there something else, Mrs. Pruitt? I've got work to do." "I came to invite you to the church social next Saturday." Mrs. Pruitt's tone shifted businesslike. "The whole town will be there. It would be good for Sam to socialize with other children." "We'll see." "And your Miss Whitmore is welcome, of course." The words dripped with insincerity. "Though I imagine she'd be more comfortable staying home. These social occasions can be overwhelming for someone not accustomed to polite society." Clara's hands curled into fists. "I'll let her decide for herself," Caleb said. "Good day, Mrs. Pruitt. Dorothy." The carriage rattled away. Clara waited until it was out of sight before stepping onto the porch. Caleb stood with his back to her shoulders tight. "I heard," she said quietly. "I figured." "You didn't have to defend me." He turned. His eyes were unreadable. "You're under my roof. That makes you my responsibility." "Is that what I am? A responsibility?" Something flickered across his face. "I didn't mean—" "It's fine." Clara wrapped her arms around herself against the cold. "You're right. I am a responsibility. One you didn't ask for and probably don't want." Clara. Her name in his mouth first time he'd used it stopped her cold. "What?" He seemed to struggle with something. "Then the church social. You should come." "Why?" "So Mrs. Pruitt can humiliate me in front of the entire town." "So the entire town can see you're not what she says you are." Clara stared at him. "Unless you're afraid," he added. "I'm not afraid." "Good." He almost smiled. "Almost. Sam will want to show you off anyway. Been talking about you to everyone who'll listen." "Has he?" "Claims you tell better stories than his mama did." Caleb's voice caught slightly on the word. That's not nothing, Clara." He walked away before she could respond. That night, after Sam was asleep, Clara sat by the fire mending one of the boys' shirts. The tear was small, but in an awkward spot, requiring careful stitching. The door opened. Caleb entered, stamping snow from his boots. "Thought you'd be asleep," he said. "Couldn't settle." He moved to the fire, warming his hands. The silence stretched, but it was different now. Less hostile. More like two people learning to share space. "Can I ask you something?" Clara said finally. Caleb glanced at her. "Go ahead." "Mrs. Pruitt, Dorothy, they've been after you since your wife died." "Before even." He stared into the flames. "Dorothy had her eye on me when we were young, before I met Martha." What happened? Martha happened. A ghost of warmth crossed his face. She came to Sage Creek to visit her uncle for the summer. I took one look at her and forgot Dorothy existed. That must have stung. Dorothy doesn't forgive easily. Neither does her mother. He paused. When Martha died, they came calling within a month. Casseroles and condolences, offers to help with Sam. And you refused. I wasn't interested in replacing Martha. His jaw tightened. I'm still not. Clara absorbed this. Then why advertise for a mail-order bride? Because Sam was drowning. The words came out rough. Because I'd find him at Martha's grave talking to her headstone like she could answer. Because he stopped eating, stopped playing, stopped being a child. Caleb turned to face her. I couldn't give him what he needed. I still can't. But I thought maybe someone else could. And you picked me, sight unseen. Your letter was different. Different how? He reached into his pocket, pulled out a worn piece of paper. Clara recognized it instantly, her response to his advertisement written at a scarred boarding house table in St. Louis, her last dollars spent on the postage. I have nothing to offer but my word and my willingness to work, he read aloud. I do not pretend to be what I am not. If you seek a woman of means, look elsewhere. If you seek a woman of character, I humbly submit my application. Clara's cheeks flushed. That sounds rather presumptuous now. It sounds honest. He folded the letter carefully. Everyone else wrote about their cooking skills, their sewing, their family connections. You wrote about truth. Truth is all I had. Truth is more than most people have. He looked at her steadily. I almost didn't answer. Figured you for a fraud, no one's that straightforward. But you did answer. Sam found the letter, read it before I could stop him. A reluctant smile tugged at his mouth. He said anyone who talked about truth that much had to be telling it. Smart boy. Gets it from his mother. They sat in comfortable quiet. The fire crackled. Wind whispered against the windows. Caleb. Yeah. Thank you, for today, for defending me to Mrs. Pruitt. He shrugged. Like I said, you're under my roof. Still, it meant something. He nodded once, not looking at her. Then he stood, stretched, moved toward the hallway. Get some sleep, Clara. Church socials in 5 days. You'll need your strength. The social arrived faster than Clara expected. She spent the morning helping Sam dress in his Sunday best, a task that involved considerable negotiation about the necessity of a tie. But it chokes me, Sam protested. It does not choke you. It's barely touching your neck. It feels like choking. Sam Morrison, half the men in town will be wearing ties today. They're used to being choked. Clara bit back a laugh. Tell you what, wear it during the service and you can take it off for the social afterward. Sam considered this. Deal. Caleb appeared in the doorway, and Clara's breath caught. She'd only ever seen him in work clothes, rough shirts, worn trousers, dusty boots. Today he wore a dark suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly. His hair was combed, his face clean-shaven. He looked like a different man. He looked, she realized with a start, like a man worth looking at. Pa, you look fancy, Sam declared. Don't get used to it. Caleb's eyes moved to Clara. You ready? She'd done her best with what she had. Her least patched dress, her hair carefully pinned, her mother's cameo brooch at her throat. She knew she didn't compare to Dorothy Pruitt's silks and satins. But she stood straight, chin lifted. Ready? The church was already full when they arrived. Heads turned. Whispers started. Clara felt the weight of 100 eyes measuring her, finding her wanting. Sam grabbed her hand and squeezed. Don't worry, he whispered. I'll protect you. Her heart swelled. They found a pew near the back. Clara kept her gaze forward, ignoring the turned heads, the pointed fingers, the murmured comments. Beside her, Caleb sat rigid, his jaw tight. The service passed in a blur. Clara barely heard the Reverend's words, too aware of the attention focused on her. Then it was over, and the real trial began. The social was held in the church hall tables, laden with food clusters of townsfolk chatting, children running between adult legs. Clara stood near the wall trying to be invisible. It didn't work. "Miss Whitmore!" Mrs. Pruitt materialized Dorothy at her side. "How brave of you to come!" "Mrs. Pruitt, Miss Pruitt. I must say you clean up better than expected." Dorothy's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Though that dress has seen better days, hasn't it? It served me well." "I'm sure it has." Dorothy leaned closer. "Tell me, is it true you were dismissed from your position in Boston under a cloud of scandal?" Clara's blood went cold. "I don't know what you've heard." "Oh, I've heard a great deal. Letters have been exchanged. Questions have been asked." Dorothy's voice carried just enough to reach nearby ears. "Senator Whitfield's wife was quite forthcoming about your indiscretions. Those accusations were false." "Were they? Then why did you flee to the frontier?" Dorothy's laugh was brittle. "Innocent women don't run, Miss Whitmore." Clara's hands shook. She clasped them together, fighting for composure. "I left because I had no choice. Because when a powerful man lies and his wife believes him, a governess has no defense." "How convenient. Blame the man." Dorothy's lip curled. "That's what women like you always do." "Women like me. Women who come from nothing and try to take what isn't theirs." The words hung in the air. Nearby, conversations had stopped. People were listening openly now. Clara felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. Everything she'd built in the past 2 weeks, the tentative trust, the fragile hope, crumbling under the weight of old lies. Then a voice cut through the silence. "Miss Pruitt, I believe you dropped something." Jacob Reeves stood behind them, his expression neutral. He held out a handkerchief. "I didn't. Must have fallen from your sleeve." His eyes met Dorothy's. "Happens when folks wave their hands around too much." Dorothy's face flushed. "I wasn't waving." "No, ma'am, course not." Jacob's voice stayed even. "Just looked like it from where I was standing." Another voice joined in. Dr. Henry Chen, the town's physician, stepped forward with his wife. "Miss Whitmore, I don't believe we've been properly introduced." He offered his hand. "Henry Chen. I attended Sam's mother during her final hours. Caleb speaks highly of you." Clara shook his hand, steadied by the unexpected support. "Dr. Chen, I've heard wonderful things about your practice. And this is my wife, Mei Lin." Mrs. Chen smiled warmly. "Welcome to Sage Creek, Miss Whitmore. Pay no attention to the gossips. This town is full of people who came here running from something. What matters is what you run toward." Clara's eyes stung. "Thank you." Mrs. Pruitt's expression had gone sour. "How touching. The outsiders banding together." "That's enough." Caleb's voice came from behind Clara. She hadn't heard him approach, but suddenly he was there, standing at her shoulder. Solid, protective. "Mrs. Pruitt, whatever letters you've been writing, whatever stories you've been spreading, stop. I'm simply concerned. You're simply interfering, and I won't have it." His voice carried through the hall. "Miss Whitmore is a guest in my home. She's been nothing but kind to my son and hard-working on my ranch. Her past is her own business, not yours, not anyone's." The room had gone silent. "Caleb." Mrs. Pruitt's tone sharpened. "Be reasonable. You know nothing about this woman. I know she tells the truth when lying would be easier. I know she works until her hands bleed without complaint. I know my boy smiles again because of her." His jaw tightened. "That's more than I know about most people in this room." Dorothy stepped forward. "Caleb, please. We've known each other since childhood. You can't seriously prefer this stranger over what, Dorothy? Over you." His laugh held no warmth. "You don't want me. You want the ranch. You want what Martha had, and you'll never have it. Not from me." Dorothy's face went white, then red. "How dare you?" "I dare because I'm tired." Caleb took Clara's arm. "I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of playing nice. And I'm tired of people who measure worth by what can be bought and sold." He turned to Clara, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. We're leaving. We're leaving. Sam? The boy appeared at his father's side, eyes wide. Is Miss Clara okay? Miss Clara is fine. Caleb looked down at his son. We're going home. Good. Sam took Clara's other hand. I don't like it here anyway. The cookies are stale. Despite everything, Clara almost laughed. They walked out together, the wounded rancher, the motherless boy, and the mail-order bride in her patched dress, while the town watched in shocked silence. The wagon ride home was quiet. Sam fell asleep against Clara's shoulder, exhausted by the drama. Caleb drove in silence, his profile hard against the winter sky. Finally, Clara spoke. You didn't have to do that. Do what? Defend me, publicly, against people you've known your whole life. Those people aren't my friends. His voice was flat. They're vultures. Been circling since Martha died, waiting for me to fall. But now they'll talk. They were already talking. He glanced at her. At least now they're talking about something true. What do you mean? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, what I said in there. About you. It was true. All of it. Clara's heart stuttered. Caleb. I'm not good with words. Never have been. He stared straight ahead. But I know what I see. I see a woman who lost everything and kept her spine straight. I see someone who could have lied her way into an easier life but chose honesty instead. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. You said it yourself. You could have borrowed fine clothes, pretended to be something you weren't. His jaw worked. You chose truth. That means something. They rode in silence for a while longer. Then, those accusations, from Boston. Caleb's voice was careful. Were they true? No. Clara's answer was immediate. The senator, he made advances. I refused. His wife walked in at the wrong moment and believed what she wanted to believe. And no one defended you. The other servants were afraid for their positions. The family closed ranks. Her voice broke slightly. I had no proof, no allies, no way to fight back. So I ran. To a mail-order advertisement in a Montana newspaper. To a chance, any chance. She looked at him. I didn't care where I ended up. I just needed somewhere to start over. Caleb nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I believe you. 3 words. Simple. Devastating. Clara felt something crack open in her chest, something she'd been holding tight since the day she'd been thrown out of the Whitfield house. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me. Just... He stopped, started again. Just keep being who you are. That's enough. They pulled up to the ranch as the sun was setting. Caleb carried a sleeping Sam inside while Clara unhitched the horses. She was finishing up when Jacob appeared. Heard what happened. He leaned against the barn door. News travels fast in small towns. I imagine it does. Also heard what the boss said. About you. Jacob's eyes crinkled. Never seen him stand up to Harriet Pruitt like that. Not in all the years I've known him. He was defending himself as much as me. Maybe. But he could have stayed quiet. Could have let you take the heat and kept his peace. Jacob shook his head. He chose different. That tells you something. What does it tell me? That you matter to him. Jacob pushed off from the door, whether he knows it yet or not. He walked away into the gathering dusk. Clara stood alone in the barn horses, settling around her, and let herself feel the weight of the day. The humiliation, the defense, the unexpected kindness from strangers who knew what it meant to be judged. And Caleb's words playing over and over in her mind. Keep being who you are. That's enough. She'd spent her whole life being told she wasn't enough, not pretty enough for society, not wealthy enough for opportunity, not connected enough for protection. But here in this rough frontier place, A wounded man had looked at her and seen something worth defending. It wasn't love. She didn't fool herself about that. But it was a beginning. And beginnings, Clara had learned, were everything. She walked back to the cabin, her steps lighter than they'd been in months. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Mrs. Pruitt wouldn't give up easily. Dorothy's humiliation would demand revenge. The town's opinions would shift and settle in unpredictable ways, but tonight she had a fire waiting. A boy who needed stories and a man who believed her truth. For now that was enough. The week following the church social brought an uneasy quiet to the Morrison ranch. Clara kept expecting retaliation, a visit from the sheriff perhaps, or another of Mrs. Pruitt's poison-tipped social calls. But nothing came. The silence felt worse than confrontation, like waiting for a thunderclap after lightning. She threw herself into work. The routine had become familiar. Now rise before dawn, stoke the fire. Prepare breakfast, tend to Sam's lessons, while Caleb and Jacob worked the cattle. Afternoons she spent mending, cleaning, organizing the pantry for the long winter ahead. Sam flourished under her attention. His reading improved daily. His nightmares came less frequently. He laughed more, talked more, reached for her hand, as naturally as breathing. Miss Clara watched this. He was attempting to balance a spoon on his nose, a skill of dubious value that he'd been perfecting all morning. "Impressive," Clara said, hiding her smile. "Though I'm not sure when you'll need that particular talent." "Pa says every skill comes in handy eventually." "Does he now?" "He also says I shouldn't do it at the table, but you're not as strict as him." "I heard that." Caleb's voice came from the doorway. He'd been out checking the fence line and brought the cold in with him, stamping snow from his boots. Sam quickly pocketed the spoon. "Heard what? Don't play innocent with me, boy." But Caleb's tone held warmth. He crossed to the stove, poured himself coffee. "Weather's turning. Gonna be a bad one." Clara looked up. "How bad?" "Bad enough that we need to move the cattle to the lower pasture today. If they get caught in the high ground during a blizzard." He shook his head. "Can't afford to lose any more head this year." "What can I do?" Caleb hesitated. He'd been doing that more lately, pausing before dismissing her offers, actually considering them. "Keep the fires going. Make sure there's hot food when we get back. Could be late." "I can do more than cook, Caleb." "I know you can." His eyes met hers. "But this is dangerous work. Cattle spook easy in weather like this. One wrong move and—" He stopped. "Just stay here, please." That word again. Please. He used it so rarely that each instance felt significant. "All right?" He nodded, set down his cup. "Sam, you're staying too. No arguments." "But Pa—" "No arguments." Sam's face fell, but he knew better than to push. Caleb ruffled his hair, pulled on his heavy coat, and headed for the door. "Caleb." He turned. Clara struggled for words. Something felt wrong, a weight in her chest, a premonition she couldn't name. "Be careful." He studied her for a long moment, then so softly she almost missed it. "I will." The door closed behind him. The morning crept by. Clara tried to focus on Sam's lessons, but her attention kept drifting to the window, watching the sky darken. The wind picked up around noon, rattling the windows, sending drafts snaking under the doors. "Miss Clara." Sam looked up from his arithmetic. "Are you worried about Pa?" "A little." "He's done this lots of times. Him and Mr. Jacob know what they're doing." "I'm sure they do." But the wind kept howling, and the sky kept darkening, and the weight in Clara's chest kept growing. By late afternoon, the full force of the blizzard had arrived. Snow fell so thick that Clara couldn't see the barn from the window. The temperature plummeted. She fed the fire constantly, but cold seeped through every crack and crevice. "They should be back by now," Sam said. His voice was small. Clara pulled him close. "They probably took shelter somewhere, waited out the worst of it." "You think so?" "I think your father is the smartest rancher in Montana. He wouldn't take unnecessary risks." Sam nodded, but his eyes stayed fixed on the door. An hour passed. 2. The fire crackled. The wind screamed. Sam fell into an uneasy sleep on the sofa. Biscuit curled at his feet. Clara couldn't rest. She paced, checked the window, paced again. Something was wrong. She felt it in her bones. The door burst open. Jacob stumbled in, snow-covered and breathing hard. His face was gray. "Clara." He grabbed her arm. "It's Caleb." Her heart stopped. "What happened?" "Horse spooked. Threw him into a ravine." Jacob's words came in gasps. "I got him out, but his leg, it's bad. Real bad. I couldn't carry him all the way. Had to leave him in the line shack." "The line shack? How far?" "Half-mile, maybe. But in this storm, I'll go." "Clara, you can't. You'll never find it. You'll freeze to death before you get 100 yards. "Then show me the way." "I can barely stand. That cold—" Jacob swayed. She saw now how badly he was shaking, how his lips had gone blue. "I need to warm up, or I'm done for." Clara's mind raced. Sam was asleep. Jacob was in no condition to go back out. And Caleb was alone in a shack, injured in the worst blizzard of the season. "Tell me exactly where it is. Every landmark. Every turn. Clara, tell me." Something in her voice stopped his protests. He described the route, the fence line, to follow the old oak tree marking the turn, the creek bed that led to the shack. Clara memorized every word. "There's supplies there," Jacob said. "Blankets, dry wood. If he can keep warm, he will." Clara was already pulling on her coat, wrapping a scarf around her face. "Watch Sam. Don't tell him anything until I'm back." "Clara, this is suicide." She paused at the door. "No. Suicide is staying here, while a good man freezes to death half a mile away." She stepped into the storm. The cold hit her like a physical blow. Within seconds, she couldn't feel her face. The snow was blinding, the wind so strong she had to lean into it just to stay upright. But she moved forward. One step, then another. "Follow the fence line," Jacob had said. "Don't lose the fence." She found it with her outstretched hand, the rough wood barely visible through the white. She gripped it and walked, counting steps, forcing herself to keep moving, when every instinct screamed to turn back. The oak tree appeared like a ghost, massive, ancient, its bare branches reaching toward her like skeletal fingers. "Turn here. Follow the creek bed." The creek was frozen over a ribbon of ice, barely distinguishable from the surrounding snow. Clara stepped onto it carefully, feeling her way forward, praying the ice would hold. Time lost meaning. There was only the cold, the snow, the endless white. Her legs stopped feeling like her own. Her thoughts grew sluggish, dreamlike. "Keep moving. Keep moving. Caleb needs you. Sam needs you. Keep moving." And then a shape in the snow. Angular, man-made. The line shack. Clara stumbled toward it, fell against the door, fumbled with the latch. It gave way and she collapsed inside. Dark. Cold, but not as cold as outside. She could hear breathing, labored, pained. "Caleb." A groan from the corner. Clara crawled toward the sound, her frozen hands finding him in the darkness. He was curled on the floor, his leg twisted at an angle that made her stomach lurch. "Clara." His voice was weak, confused. "What? How?" "Don't talk. I'm going to start a fire." Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip the matches. The first 3 broke. The 4th finally caught, and she coaxed a flame from the dry kindling Jacob had mentioned. Light flickered, grew, and warmth began to seep into the tiny space. By the fire's glow, she could see the damage. Caleb's right leg was badly broken, the bone pressing against the skin, in a way that made her bite back nausea. His face was white with pain, his breathing shallow. "You shouldn't have come." His eyes found hers. "You'll die out here. So will you without help." She found blankets, wrapped them around him. "I'm not losing another person I care about, Caleb Morrison. So you're going to stay alive. That's an order." He laughed, a broken sound that turned into a cough. "Yes, ma'am." She worked through the night. The fire needed constant tending, too small. and they'd freeze too large, and they'd run through the wood supply before dawn. She kept Caleb talking, asking him questions about the ranch, about Sam, about Martha. Anything to keep him conscious. "How did you meet her?" Clara asked. "Your wife. Told you. She came to visit her uncle." "You told me you saw her and forgot Dorothy existed. You didn't tell me how." Caleb's eyes closed. For a moment she thought he'd lost consciousness. Then, "She was arguing with Mr. Patterson at the general store. He'd shortchanged her uncle on a feed order. She was half his size and twice as fierce." "What did you do?" "Nothing. Just watched. Never seen anyone stand up to Patterson like that." A ghost of a smile. "She won too. Made him apologize in front of the whole store." "Sounds like a remarkable woman." "She was." His voice went soft. "Sam has her spirit. Same fire, same stubbornness. I've noticed." "She would have liked you, Clara." Clara's throat tightened. "You don't know that." "I do." His hand found hers in the firelight. His grip was weak but warm. "She always said she could spot truth-tellers at 50 paces. Something about the eyes." "My eyes?" "You don't look away when things get hard. You face them straight on." He squeezed her fingers. "Martha did that too." Clara didn't know what to say. The storm howled outside. Inside, the fire crackled softly. "I'm scared, Clara." The admission shocked her. This man who never showed weakness, never asked for help, never admitted vulnerability, scared. Of what? Dying here. Leaving Sam alone. "You're not going to die." "My leg." "Will heal. Dr. Chen will set it properly. You'll limp for a while, maybe forever, but you'll live." "You don't know that." "No," she admitted, "but I believe it. And right now, belief is all we have." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Will you stay after this? Whatever happens?" "Caleb." "I know I haven't been." He struggled for words. "I've kept you at arm's length. Treated you like an employee instead of—" He stopped. "Instead of what?" His eyes met hers. In the firelight, they looked almost warm. "I don't know how to do this, Clara. Don't know how to let someone in again. Martha's death broke something in me. Something I thought couldn't be fixed. Maybe it can't be fixed. Maybe it just heals different, scarred but whole." "Is that what you believe?" "It's what I hope." The wind gusted, sending a shower of sparks up the chimney. Clara added another log to the fire. "When I was at the Whitfield house," she said slowly, "I thought my life was set. I'd be a governess forever. Maybe eventually become a companion to some elderly woman. Die alone in a boarding house somewhere, having never really lived." "That doesn't sound like you." "It was all I thought I deserved." She poked at the fire. "Then everything fell apart. And I discovered something surprising." "What?" "That the worst thing that ever happened to me was also the best. Because it forced me to find out who I really was. Not the governess, not the respectable employee, not the woman who never caused trouble." She met his eyes. The woman who could walk through a blizzard to save someone she cared about. Caleb stared at her. In his expression, she saw something shift, some wall coming down, some door opening. "Clara." "Yes. When we get out of here." He winced as pain shot through his leg. "Damn. When we get out of here, I want to start over. Do this right." "Do what right?" "Us. Whatever this is. I want—" He gripped her hand tighter. "I want to court you. Properly. Like you deserve." Clara's heart stuttered. "Caleb, you're in pain. You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking clearer than I have in years." His voice was fierce, despite its weakness. "Nearly dying does that to a man. Strips away all the nonsense, leaves only what matters. And what matters? Sam, the ranch, and you." He held her gaze. "You matter, Clara. I've been too stubborn and too scared to say it, but you matter, more than I ever expected." Tears blurred her vision. She blinked them back. Ask me again when you're not half frozen with a broken leg. If you still mean it, then... I'll still mean it. Then we'll talk. He nodded exhausted, and his eyes finally closed. His breathing evened out, still pained but steadier. Clara sat beside him, watching the fire, listening to the storm, and felt something she hadn't felt in longer than she could remember. Hope. Dawn came gray and cold, but the storm had passed. Clara woke to sunlight filtering through cracks in the line shack walls. Caleb was still sleeping, his face less pale than the night before. The fire had died to embers. She stepped outside into a world transformed. Snow lay thick and pristine, covering everything. In the distance, she could just make out the ranch buildings. Within the hour, she heard voices. Jacob leading a search party. Dr. Chen on horseback. Sam running ahead of them, all his small figure dark against the white. Miss Clara. Miss Clara. She caught him as he launched himself at her, his arms wrapping tight around her waist. You're okay. Pa's okay. You're both okay. We're both okay, she confirmed, holding him close. Dr. Chen took charge of Caleb. The leg was badly broken, but clean, no bone through skin, no sign of infection. He'd need surgery to set it properly, weeks of recovery, months before he'd walk without a crutch. But he'll walk, Clara asked. He'll walk, thanks to you. Dr. Chen looked at her with newfound respect. What you did last night, walking into that storm, that was either the bravest or the most foolish thing I've ever heard. Maybe both. Definitely both. He smiled. But he's alive because of it. Don't forget that. They brought Caleb back to the ranch on a makeshift sled. The surgery happened in the main room, Clara assisting, while Sam waited in the barn with Jacob. The doctor's hands were steady, his instructions calm. Clara followed them without flinching. You'd make a good nurse, Dr. Chen observed as he finished. I'd make a terrible nurse. I hate the sight of blood. Could have fooled me. When it was done, Caleb was installed in his bedroom, his leg splinted and elevated laudanum, dulling the worst of the pain. Sam crept in to see him, eyes wide. Pa, you okay? I'm okay, son. Caleb's voice was drowsy. Thanks to Miss Clara. Sam turned to her, his expression serious beyond his years. You saved him. We saved each other. No. The boy shook his head. Mister, Jacob told me what you did. Walking in that storm, all by yourself. His lower lip trembled. You could have died. But I didn't. Why? Sam's voice cracked. Why would you risk dying for us? We're not even your family. Clara knelt to his level, taking his small hands in hers. Sam, listen to me. Family isn't just about blood. It's about who you choose to love, who you're willing to fight for. She squeezed his fingers. I chose you and your father the moment I stepped off that stagecoach. Maybe even before that. Maybe when I read your father's advertisement and decided that honesty was worth a chance. Sam's tears spilled over. He threw his arms around her neck. I love you, Miss Clara. The words hit her like a physical force. She held him tight, her own tears falling freely. I love you too, Sam. So much. From the bed, Caleb watched them. His eyes glistened in the lamplight. The next 2 weeks were the hardest of Clara's life and the most rewarding. With Caleb bedridden, the ranch's daily operations fell to her and Jacob. She rose before dawn and worked until exhaustion claimed her learning tasks. She'd never imagined breaking ice on the water troughs, forking hay to hungry cattle, even helping Jacob repair a section of fence that had collapsed under the snow's weight. Her hands, which had finally begun to heal, cracked and bled again. Her muscles screamed with every movement. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. You're going to kill yourself at this pace, Jacob observed one afternoon. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're running on stubbornness and spite. Those have served me well so far. Jacob shook his head, but he was smiling. Caleb watched her transformation with something like wonder. From his bed, he could see her through the window hauling wood-feeding chickens trudging through snow to check on the cattle in the near pasture. "She's remarkable," he told Jacob one evening. "She is, also stubborn as a mule." I noticed. "You two are well matched then." Caleb didn't argue. As his strength returned, he began directing operations from his bed. Clara would report to him each evening, detailing the day's work, asking questions, taking notes. Their conversations grew longer, more personal. "Tell me about Boston," he said one night. "Not the bad parts, the good parts." There were good parts. There must have been. Something that made you stay 10 years. Clara thought about it. The children. The Whitfield children. Before everything went wrong, I loved teaching them. Watching their minds open. Seeing the world become larger for them. You miss it. I miss what it was supposed to be, not what it became. And now teaching Sam does that, fill the gap. Sam fills gaps I didn't know I had. She smiled. "He's extraordinary, Caleb. You should be proud." "I am proud. He struggled. "I don't know how to show it. Martha was the one who knew how to say things. I just worked." "Working is a way of saying things. Sam knows you love him." "Does he?" "He told me once that you built this cabin with your own hands, that you carved his first toy horse, that you sit with him when he has nightmares, even when you pretend you don't." Caleb looked away. "He told you that?" "He tells me everything. It's rather exhausting, actually." A surprised laugh escaped him. "He gets that from Martha, too." "I figured." Clara hesitated. "You know you don't have to pretend with me, to be strong all the time, to have everything under control." "Force of habit." "Habits can change." His eyes met hers. "Yeah, I'm starting to see that." 3 weeks after the accident, Mrs. Pruitt came to call. Clara was alone in the kitchen when she heard the carriage. Sam was in the barn with Jacob. Caleb was resting. She wiped her hands on her apron and stepped onto the porch. Mrs. Pruitt descended from the carriage with regal grace. This time Dorothy wasn't with her. "Miss Whitmore." The older woman's smile was cold. "I heard about Mr. Morrison's accident. I've brought a basket." "That's kind of you." "May I come in?" Every instinct told Clara to refuse, but Caleb would hear about it if she turned away a neighbor offering condolences. The town would talk. More ammunition for Mrs. Pruitt's campaign. Of course. She led the woman inside, offered her a seat by the fire. Mrs. Pruitt looked around the cabin with barely concealed contempt. "So this is where you've been hiding. Quite rustic." "It's a working ranch. Function over form." "Indeed." Mrs. Pruitt set down her basket. "I'll be direct, Miss Whitmore. I haven't come to make peace." "I didn't imagine you had." "I've come to make you an offer." The woman's eyes glittered. $500, cash, for you to leave Sage Creek and never return." Clara's breath caught. $500 was a fortune. More money than she'd ever seen in her life. Enough to start over anywhere, a boarding house, a small shop, a future that didn't involve frozen pumps and hostile neighbors. "And if I refuse, then I'll make your life here impossible." Mrs. Pruitt's voice hardened. "The letters I've written to Boston are just the beginning. I have friends in Helena, connections in Washington. I can ensure that every door in this territory closes against you. Why, what have I done to you? You've taken what should have been my daughter's. This ranch, this life, this man. Dorothy has waited years for Caleb Morrison to recover from his ridiculous grief, and just when he was ready, you appeared. I appeared because he advertised for a bride. That was his choice. His choice was clouded by desperation. He didn't know what he was doing. I think he knew exactly what he was doing." Clara stood straighter. "I think he chose honesty over pretense, substance over show. And I think that frightens you, Mrs. Pruitt's mask slipped, revealing the ugliness beneath. "You're nothing. A penniless governess with a scandal following her like a bad smell. You don't deserve to breathe the same air as decent people, let alone marry into one of the finest ranches in Montana. And Dorothy does. A woman who measures worth by what can be bought and sold. Dorothy understands how the world works. Maybe. But I understand something more important. Clara took a step forward. I understand that Caleb Morrison doesn't want your daughter. He's told you as much, multiple times, and no amount of money or scheming will change that. Mrs. Pruitt rose, her face flushed with fury. You'll regret this. Perhaps, but not as much as I'd regret giving up on something real for something safe. Clara moved to the door and opened it. Thank you for your visit, Mrs. Pruitt. Please don't come again. For a moment, the older woman stood frozen. Then, with a sound of pure rage, she swept past Clara and out into the cold. The carriage rattled away. Clara closed the door and leaned against it, her heart pounding. Her hands were shaking not from cold this time, but from adrenaline. That was impressive. She spun. Caleb stood in the hallway, supporting himself on the wall. His face was pale from the effort of standing, but his eyes were bright. You heard every word. He limped toward her each step, obviously painful. $500, Clara. You could have taken it. I could have. Why didn't you? She thought about the question, really thought. Because I'm tired of running, because for the first time in my life I have something worth fighting for. She met his eyes. Because you believed me when no one else would. And that's worth more than $500. Caleb reached her, steadying himself on the doorframe. They stood inches apart. Clara. Yes. I meant what I said in the line shack, about courting you properly. You were half frozen and delirious. I was clear-headed enough to know my own heart. He raised a hand, hesitated, then gently touched her cheek. I'm not good at this. At words, at feelings, at letting people in. But I want to try. With you. If you'll let me. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Caleb Morrison, you impossible man. You're supposed to be in bed. I'm supposed to be a lot of things. Right now, I just want to be here. With you. She laughed a wet, shaky sound. Then yes. Yes, I'll let you try. His hand slid from her cheek to her neck, cupping gently. He leaned forward, wincing at the strain on his leg. This might be easier if you met me halfway, he murmured. She rose on her toes and kissed him. It was soft, tentative, two wounded people learning each other's edges. But beneath the gentleness was something fierce, a promise, a declaration, a beginning. When they finally broke apart, Caleb was smiling. Actually smiling. That was worth a broken leg, he said. Don't you dare break anything else. No promises. From outside came the sound of running footsteps. Sam burst through the door, stopping short at the sight of his father out of bed, standing close to Clara, both of them flushed and breathless. Pa? What are you doing up? His eyes widened. Wait, were you kissing Miss Clara? Sam. You were. I can tell your face is all red. Samuel Morrison. Does this mean she's staying forever? Does this mean she's gonna be my ma? Caleb looked at Clara. Clara looked at Caleb. We're taking things slow, Caleb said carefully. But yes, if she'll have us, she's staying. Sam let out a whoop loud enough to be heard in Helena. He launched himself at them, wrapping his arms around both, nearly toppling his father in the process. This is the best day ever. Wait till I tell Biscuit he's gonna be so happy. He tore out again, shouting for his dog. Caleb steadied himself against Clara, laughing, actually laughing, the sound rusty from disuse, but real. That boy, he said, shaking his head. That boy is perfect. He thinks you are too. Clara helped Caleb back to bed, her heart full to bursting. Outside, she could hear Sam telling Biscuit the news in elaborate detail. You know, Caleb said as she settled him against the pillows. Mrs. Pruitt's not going to stop. I know. She'll make trouble, lots of it. I know that too. And you're not scared. Clara thought of the blizzard she'd walked through, the lies she'd survived, the life she'd built from nothing. I'm terrified, she admitted. But I've learned something about fear. What's that? It's much smaller when you're not facing it alone. Caleb took her hand, pressed it to his lips. You won't be alone. Not anymore. Not ever again. Clara believed him, and for the first time in her life, that belief felt like solid ground. Mrs. Pruitt's retaliation came faster than Clara expected. 3 days after the confrontation, Jacob rode into the yard with news that made Clara's blood run cold. General Store's refusing to sell to us. He dismounted, his expression grim. Patterson claims we owe back credit. Says he won't extend another penny until it's paid. That's a lie. Caleb had graduated from bed to a chair by the fire, his leg propped up on a stool. We settled that account in September. I have the receipt. He says the receipt's a forgery. A forgery. Clara's voice sharpened. That's absurd. Mrs. Pruitt's brother. Jacob removed his hat, ran a hand through his graying hair. She got to him. Got to a few others too, from what I hear. Miller at the feed store suddenly can't spare any grain. The blacksmith's too busy to shoe our horses. Caleb's jaw tightened. She's trying to squeeze us out. She's doing a good job of it. Winter's barely half over. We need supplies. Clara sank into a chair, mind racing. This was worse than gossip, worse than social humiliation. This was economic warfare. Without supplies, the ranch couldn't function. Without the ranch, Helena. She looked up. We can get supplies in Helena. 2 days' ride in good weather, a week in this. Jacob shook his head. And Helena merchants don't know us. They'll want cash up front. Then we pay cash. Clara. Caleb started. We have money, don't we? Whatever we were going to spend at Patterson's. Some. Not enough for a full winter's worth. Then we buy what we absolutely need and make the rest last. Clara stood, her spine straightening. Mrs. Pruitt wants to starve us out. We won't give her the satisfaction. Jacob and Caleb exchanged glances. She's got fire, Jacob observed. Tell me something I don't know. Clara spent that evening taking inventory. The pantry was better stocked than she'd feared. Her weeks of careful management had stretched their supplies further than expected. But gaps remained. Flour would run out in a month. Coffee in 2 weeks. Medical supplies were dangerously low. We can do without coffee, she told Caleb. The flour's more pressing. Can't do without coffee. I'll lose my mind. Then we'll find another way to get it. She made a note. What about the cattle? Can we sell any early? Not until spring. They're too thin from winter grazing. We'd get half what they're worth. Half is better than nothing. Caleb studied her across the firelight. You're not giving up. Did you expect me to? Honestly, I didn't know what to expect. He leaned forward, wincing at the strain on his leg. Most people would have taken that $500 and run. I'm not most people. No. His voice softened. You're not. Sam appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. What's going on? I heard talking. Nothing for you to worry about, sweetheart. Clara held out her hand. Come sit with us. He crossed the room and climbed into her lap, a habit he'd developed over the past weeks, seeking her closeness with the desperation of a child who'd known too much loss. Is the mean lady making trouble again? Clara glanced at Caleb. They'd tried to shield Sam from the worst of the conflict, but children heard more than adults realized. Some people don't like change, she said carefully. They're afraid of things they don't understand. Mrs. Pruitt's not afraid. She's just mean. Sam. Caleb's voice held warning. It's true, Pa. Henry at school says his ma thinks Mrs. Pruitt is a snake in Sunday clothes. Despite everything, Clara laughed. Henry's mother sounds wise. She is. She makes the best apple pie in town, and she told me once that you seem like a nice lady. Sam looked up at Clara earnestly. Can you make apple pie? I can learn. Good, because Pa's pie is terrible. Thank you, Sam. Caleb's tone was dry. I'll remember that. Clara held the boy close, drawing strength from his warmth. Whatever came next, she had a child who trusted her, a man who believed in her, a home worth fighting for. She wouldn't let Mrs. Pruitt take it away. The next morning, Clara made a decision. I'm going to town. Caleb looked up sharply from his breakfast. That's not a good idea. Maybe not. But hiding here while she spreads poison isn't a good idea either. Clara tied her bonnet with steady hands. People need to see me. To know I'm not ashamed, not beaten, not running away. What about what they'll say? They'll say it whether I'm there or not. At least this way I can answer. Jacob appeared at the door. I'll drive her. Jacob, Caleb started. Boss, she's right. Only way to fight gossip is with presence. Folks can ignore rumors about a woman they've never met. Harder to ignore one standing right in front of them. Caleb looked between them, frustration evident. His injury kept him trapped, dependent on others in a way that clearly chafed. Take the rifle, he said finally. Just in case. I'll take the rifle. Jacob nodded. But I don't reckon we'll need it. Mrs. Pruitt's weapons are words, not bullets. The ride to town felt longer than usual. Clara watched the familiar landmarks pass the old oak tree, the frozen creek, the rise where the church steeple first became visible, and tried to calm her racing heart. Nervous? Jacob asked. Terrified. Doesn't show. I've had practice hiding it. They pulled up to the main street. Even from the wagon, Clara could feel the stares. Word had spread quickly, the mail-order bride who'd walked through a blizzard, who'd rejected Mrs. Pruitt's money, who'd somehow captured Caleb Morrison's heart. Where to? Jacob asked. The church. I want to speak to Reverend Ashby. The Reverend was in his office sorting through papers. He looked up as Clara entered, and his face broke into a warm smile. Miss Whitmore, I heard about your heroics in the storm. Quite remarkable. I did what anyone would have done. We both know that's not true. He gestured to a chair. Sit, please. I suspect you didn't come just to make small talk. Clara sat, hands folded in her lap. I need help, Reverend. Mrs. Pruitt has turned the merchants against us. We can't buy supplies in town. I heard about that too. The Reverend's expression sobered. Harriet Pruitt is a formidable woman. When she decides to destroy someone, she's usually successful. Usually, but not always. Not always. He leaned back. What would you have me do? Talk to people. You have influence. If the church speaks on our behalf, the church can't take sides in personal disputes. Clara's heart sank. Even when one side is clearly in the wrong. Especially then. Harriet Pruitt has been a generous donor to this congregation. Half the pews were paid for with Pruitt money. The Reverend's voice was gentle but firm. If I publicly oppose her, I risk splitting the community. And a divided community helps no one. So she wins, because she has money. She has money and connections and decades of social capital. You have... He stopped. Nothing. I have nothing. No. The Reverend leaned forward. You have something she doesn't. You have the truth. You have a story of survival and courage that people admire whether they admit it or not. You have a little boy who loves you and a good man who chose you. None of that pays for flour. No. But it pays for something more valuable. He stood, moved to the window. There are people in this town who are tired of Harriet Pruitt's tyranny. Who've been hurt by her, shunned by her, made to feel small by her. They stay quiet because they're afraid. But fear can be overcome by example. What are you saying? I'm saying that if you stand firm, others might find the courage to stand with you. He turned to face her. I can't officially support you, Miss Whitmore, but unofficially, very unofficially, I can let certain people know that the church would not look unfavorably on those who offer you assistance. Clara's breath caught. You'd do that. I became a minister to serve God and help people. Harriet Pruitt believes she is people. I've never agreed with that assessment. For the first time in days, Clara felt hope. Thank you, Reverend. I won't forget this. Don't thank me yet. What I can do is limited. The rest is up to you. Clara stepped out of the church into the gray afternoon. Jacob waited with the wagon, but before she could reach him, a voice called out, "Miss Whitmore." She turned. A woman approached, middle-aged, plainly dressed, her face weathered by frontier life. Clara recognized her from church. Mrs. Thompson, the blacksmith's wife. Mrs. Thompson. I heard you were in town. The woman glanced around nervously. I can't talk long. Harriet's got eyes everywhere. What is it? My husband won't shoe your horses because he's scared of losing business. But she pressed something into Clara's hand. A folded paper. My cousin runs a smithy in Miller's Creek, 12 miles east. Tell him Sarah sent you. He'll help. Clara stared at the paper. Why are you doing this? Because you walked through a blizzard to save a man's life. Because my daughter has nightmares, and nobody ever sits with her the way you sit with that Morrison boy. Mrs. Thompson's eyes glistened. Because some of us remember what it's like to come to this territory with nothing. To be judged for what we don't have instead of who we are. Mrs. Thompson, don't say my name. Don't tell anyone I talked to you. She was already backing away. Just survive, Miss Whitmore. Show us all it can be done. She hurried off before Clara could respond. Clara looked down at the paper in her hand. A name, a direction, a lifeline. One ally. It wasn't much, but it was something. The weeks that followed became a careful dance of survival and resistance. Clara made the trip to Miller's Creek with Jacob returning with their horses newly shod and a promise of future service. Word spread quietly, the Morrison Ranch wasn't completely isolated after all. More small kindnesses followed. Dr. Chen brought medical supplies on a routine house call and refused payment. Mei Lin Chen appeared one morning with a basket of flour, claiming she'd ordered too much by mistake. The Miller boy started leaving vegetables on their fence post, running away before anyone could thank him. Seems you've got more friends than Mrs. Pruitt expected, Jacob observed. Not friends, not yet. Clara sorted through the latest anonymous delivery, dried beans, salt, a precious tin of coffee. Just people who are tired of being told who to hate. Sometimes that's how friendship starts. Caleb's recovery progressed slowly. By the 5th week, he could move around the cabin with a crutch. By the 6th, he could make it to the porch. Each small victory was celebrated by Sam, who'd appointed himself his father's personal nurse. Pa, you're supposed to rest. I'm resting. You're standing. That's not resting. Sam. Miss Clara, tell him. Clara looked up from her mending. Your son has a point. The doctor said 6 weeks of bed rest. The doctor also said I might never walk again. I'm walking. Caleb leaned against the porch rail, stubborn as ever. I'm not going to heal by lying in bed feeling useless. You're not useless. I can't ride, can't work cattle, can't protect my own family. The frustration in his voice was raw. What good am I? Clara set down her needle and crossed to him. You're good because you're here, because Sam needs his father, because I need... She stopped. What do you need? Someone to share the worry with. She stood beside him, looking out at the snow-covered land. It's hard, Caleb. Harder than I expected. Managing the ranch, fighting Mrs. Pruitt, trying to keep Sam's spirits up. Some nights I feel like I'm holding everything together with my bare hands, and they're bleeding, and I don't know how much longer I can hold on. Clara. He reached for her, his hand finding hers. Why didn't you tell me? Because you had enough to worry about. Your leg, your recovery. You're not supposed to carry this alone. That's not how this works." "How does it work then? Because I've never done this before. I don't know the rules." "There are no rules." He pulled her closer, awkward with the crutch, but determined. "There's just us figuring it out together. You don't have to be strong every minute. You don't have to pretend everything's fine when it isn't. If I stop pretending, I might fall apart." "Then fall apart. I'll catch you." Clara looked up at him, this stubborn, wounded, complicated man who'd somehow become her anchor. "Promise. Promise." She leaned into him, letting herself feel the exhaustion she'd been fighting. He held her steady, his chin resting on her hair, and for a moment the world narrowed to just the two of them. "Pa, Miss Clara, why are you hugging?" Sam's voice came from the doorway, curious and slightly suspicious. "Because hugging helps people feel better," Clara said without moving. "Oh," a pause. "Can I hug too?" They opened their arms and Sam ran to join them. Three people holding each other against the cold, the fear, the uncertainty of tomorrow. Family, Clara thought. This is what family feels like. The breaking point came in early February. Clara was in the barn helping Jacob repair a broken harness when Sam burst in with wild eyes. "Miss Clara, someone's coming. Lots of someones." She hurried to the yard. A group of riders was approaching, 5, 6, 7 of them. Her heart seized. Had Mrs. Pruitt finally resorted to violence, but as they drew closer, she recognized faces. Mrs. Thompson, Dr. Chen, Reverend Ashby on a borrowed horse, the Miller family. Others she knew only by sight. Leading them was a woman Clara had never seen before, elderly, silver-haired, sitting ramrod straight in her saddle despite the cold. "That's Mrs. Elizabeth Morrison." Jacob appeared beside Clara, voice low. "Caleb's grandmother. I thought she was in Denver." "Grandmother? She ran this ranch for 30 years after her husband died. Toughest woman in Montana." Jacob let out a breath. "And she's no friend of Harriet Pruitt's." The riders stopped at the fence. The old woman dismounted with surprising agility for her age, walked straight to Clara, and studied her with sharp blue eyes. "So you're the girl who walked through a blizzard?" "Yes, ma'am." "And refused Harriet's money?" "Yes, ma'am." "And have been running my grandson's ranch while he recovers from his own foolishness." "I've been doing my best, ma'am." The old woman circled Clara slowly, examining her like a horse at auction. "You're too thin, and your hands are a mess, but you've got backbone. I can see that." "Grandmother." Caleb's voice came from the porch. He'd managed to make it outside, leaning heavily on his crutch. "What are you doing here?" "What do you think I'm doing? I got word that some trumped-up shopkeeper's wife was trying to destroy my family. Did you think I'd sit in Denver and knit? The roads are dangerous. You shouldn't have—" "Don't tell me what I shouldn't have done. I was crossing these mountains before you were born." She turned back to Clara. "Now then, I've brought supply support and a few friends who are tired of Harriet Pruitt's reign of terror. What else do you need?" Clara stared at her, overwhelmed. I don't—" "Speak up, girl. Stammering doesn't suit you." "I need people to stop being afraid." The words came out stronger than expected. "I need the town to see that standing up to Mrs. Pruitt doesn't mean ruin. I need—" She paused. "I need witnesses for what she's done, so that when the truth comes out it can't be denied." Elizabeth Morrison smiled, a thin, fierce expression that transformed her weathered face. "I knew I liked you." She turned to the assembled group. "You heard her. Spread the word. Anyone with grievances against Harriet Pruitt, anyone she's cheated, threatened, or silenced, tell them it's time to speak. Tell them Elizabeth Morrison is back, and she's taking names." Mrs. Thompson stepped forward. "Harriet threatened to ruin my husband's business if he served the Morrison Ranch." "Noted." Elizabeth's voice was crisp. "Who else?" One by one, the stories came. The farmer whose land Harriet had tried to steal through questionable means. The widow whose pension Harriet had blocked through church politics. The young couple who'd been driven from town by rumors Harriet had started. Clara listened, her heart swelling with something like hope. She wasn't alone. She'd never been alone. The Allies had always been there. They'd just been too afraid to show themselves. This is good. Elizabeth surveyed the group with satisfaction. But it's not enough. Harriet won't back down unless she's forced to. We need leverage. What kind of leverage? Clara asked. The kind she can't ignore. Elizabeth's eyes glittered. Her daughter, Dorothy. Dorothy Pruitt has been playing both sides for years. She tells her mother she's devoted, but she's been secretly corresponding with a man in California. A man Harriet would never approve of, divorced Catholic and worst of all, poor. Clara's breath caught. How do you know this? Because the man is my nephew's friend. They served together in the army. Elizabeth smiled thinly. Dorothy's been planning to run away with him come spring. She's just waiting for the right moment. What does that have to do with us? Everything. Because if Harriet knew her daughter's plans, she'd have bigger problems than persecuting mail-order brides. Elizabeth paused. I'm not suggesting blackmail. I'm suggesting a conversation, a frank exchange of information between interested parties. Caleb spoke from the porch. Grandmother, that's prudent. It's prudent, boy. Harriet understands power. She won't respect anything else. Clara thought about it. The idea of using Dorothy's secret as leverage made her uncomfortable. It felt too close to the tactics Mrs. Pruitt herself employed. No, she said finally. I won't do it that way. Elizabeth's eyebrow rose. You'd rather keep struggling? I'd rather win on my own terms. If we use Dorothy's secret against her mother, we become the thing we're fighting. I won't build my future on someone else's pain. The old woman studied her for a long moment, then slowly she nodded.